Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel, or welcome to my channel. If you're new here, I hope you're all doing so well. Welcome back to another true crime and makeup episode. Oh yeah. If you are new here, hi, my name is Anna. I am a certified yapper. I could yap about true crime all day, every single day. So instead of doing that, I hop on here twice a week on a Wednesday and Sunday. We sit down, we chill out, and we talk about a true crime case that is keeping me up at night. Because if it's on my mind, it needs to be on yours too. If true crime is your jam, and if you've stumbled across this video, I imagine because it is, I highly suggest you subscribe, get notification bell on, because I'm here for you twice a week, every single week, and it's free. Doesn't get much better than that. Now today, oh my goodness, we are covering an absolute humdinger of a case. You've requested this for a long time, and I'm going to be honest, I've put it off because I hate this person. Christa Pike, I'm looking at you. This woman, if we can even call her a woman, because she is not a human being at all. She is the most demonic, manipulative, evil, vicious monster I've ever heard of. She would take the life of a 19-year-old innocent young woman by the name of Colleen Slemmer simply because she thought Colleen was interested in her man. And let me tell you, Colleen can do a lot better than Christa's man. Colleen wasn't looking the road that Christa's man, her dark prince, was on. This case makes me so angry, and we just need to dive into it, so I'm not even going to ramble too much. All the details you need regarding me, myself and I, they will all be listed down below for you. Case suggestion form, social media handles, products used on my face today. But with that being said, without any further rambling and any further ado, let's get into the horrifying, devastating case of Christa Pike. So I will say, I think there is a reason why a lot of us struggle to associate brutal, sadistic, horrifying murders with teenage girls, and sometimes honestly women as a whole. But let me just tell you, some of the most sadistic evil monsters in this world, sometimes they turn out to be female. Having a pair of boobs does not mean that you're innocent. But I would say in most circumstances we always tend to picture teenagers, young women, as these really nurturing, kind, caring, emotional, maybe even a bit impulsive. But I don't think in any sense do we ever picture these young women, young females, to be demonic, evil monsters who are capable of the most despicable crimes ever. And let me tell you, Christa Pike, she was a poster child for evil. And if you're not entirely convinced of Christa Pike being an absolute demon, what if I told you that this girl, this young teenager, this young woman would smile while she described how she beat another teenager to death with a slab of concrete? Yep, that's Christa Pike. And not only that, this evil scumbag would also keep a trophy from her victim's body. But I'm going to leave that until we get into this case. And let me tell you friends, we are going on a journey today. We are going on a roller coaster. There's ups, there's downs, there's 360. It's a whole mess. I'm not going to lie to you. And I would grab a snack, grab a drink, maybe grab a little duvet cover, get comfy, get cozy, and I mean, let's dive in. Let's start at the childhood, I guess. Christa Pike's. So Christa Gail Pike, she was born on March the 10th of 1976, and she was born in West Virginia to her young mother, who was only 18 at the time. And I will be honest, it did seem that when Christa fell out the womb, the odds were just stacked against her completely. Christa's mother, Carissa, I love the whole Carissa, cute, but her mother, Carissa, she would work constantly. And she wasn't someone who believed in all work and no play. She worked hard and she partied even harder. She was described as emotionally distant, she was volatile, and more than that, she was claimed to be deeply unstable. When it comes to Christa's father, he was out the picture from the word go. The second that child was born, poof, he was nowhere to be seen, just disappeared into the smoke. He was nothing more than a name on a birth certificate. Now, I will be fair, There are sources that claimed that he struggled with drug addiction and that he fell away from his daughter and his partner through that. But then there's other sources that claim that he was just completely uninvolved from day one because he had no interest in raising a child. So could be one of the two, or it could be none. By the time that Christa could walk on her own, she was basically on her own in this world. I mean, she has her mother, but her mother isn't around. She might as well not even be there, to be honest, because Christa's having to do most of the fending for herself. She wasn't nurturing, and believe me, she wasn't winning any Mother of the Year awards. And listen, mothers struggle. That's normal. That is okay. But neglecting your child and making your child feel like they're an issue, that's a problem. Now, I am going to have to jump just a bit forward very briefly and then I'll come right back, because this was something that was later discovered but did occur in Christa's childhood, according to her. But psychological experts who worked alongside Christa on the lead up to her trial years later, they had stated that she had suffered severe psychological neglect as a child. Not only this, but she had suffered from extreme sexual abuse, which is just unfathomable, unimaginable how someone can do that to anyone, but a child will always make my blood boil. Now, it was stated that the reason there was no details released in regards to her sexual abuse as a child is because it was so deeply disturbing, with incredibly disturbing details. But listen, that's just from sources. I can't vouch for how true that is. So by the age of just 8 years old, Christa was already showing some really worrying signs that pointed to severe mental health issues. She was incredibly aggressive and prone to very violent outbursts. She was very manipulative, and she was also fantasizing about hurting animals. Now, there was one adult in Christa's life who made her life feel a bit more stable and a bit more normal, and that was Christa's grandmother. Christa had only ever really felt true love from her grandmother and seen her grandmother almost as her parental figure, because she didn't have her father by her side, and her mother, you know, she might well as not have been by her side. And that is why it hit Christa and broke Christa so much when her grandmother passed away when she was only 12 years old. And I'll be honest, it does seem as though after her grandmother passed away is when things really started to fall apart. She didn't really have anyone holding the broken pieces together anymore. It was like her grandmother was the glue, and now Christa, she was just left to crumble. In her young teens, her behaviour really escalated quickly. She started skipping school, she was getting into fights, and she became so entrenched and obsessed with dark and violent themes. And whilst all of this is going on, Christa is just drifting from home to home. Sometimes she's with her mum for a very short period, then she's with her friends, and then she's with distant relatives. She never had a stable place to lay her head at night. But honestly, I don't even think it would matter if she did have a stable household, because trouble just seemed to find Christa and follow Christa like a bad smell. And it doesn't stop there, because by the time Christa was 15, she would be arrested for shoplifting. She was also caught with weed, and she was also accused of threatening another girl at school with a knife. Yeah, a teenager threatening a girl with a knife. I mean, no one should threaten anyone with a knife, but a teenage girl thinking that that's okay, or knowing that it's not okay and doing it anyway, like, what a freak. And all of these offences, none of them had led to any serious charges or any serious punishment due to Christa's age. But what they did do is indicate a very worrying pattern when it comes to Christa. It was clear the things that she was doing, it wasn't because she wanted to fight or because she wanted to steal. These things were a method for her to gain control in situations. This young woman, she wanted to dominate, she wanted to control, and she wanted to be feared. And she was willing to do all these things just so she could hold those titles. And you know, not to judge, but that does not signify a promising future to me. So then Christa, she starts dabbling in the occult. A little bit of this, a little bit of that, you know, just dipping her toe in the water, seeing what she likes. Friends had stated that Christa would spend a lot of her time drawing pentagrams. She would often talk about sacrifices, and not only this, but she was having demonic visions. Very, very promising. And if that doesn't seal the deal on what we're thinking about Christa, the other thing she would fantasise about was death. Not just, passing away peacefully, an old lady lying in your bed like Jack in Titanic paints it to rose, but it was very much violent death, murder, people being slaughtered, tortured. That was the kind of death that she was fantasising about. I'm sure it comes as no shock to you to know that Christa wasn't mentally well, and people around her, they very quickly figured that out. Now, a former classmate of Christa, they would later testify, and they said,
Christa was always intense. She'd stare at you like she was sizing you up, not scared of anything, just cold.
And do you know what? That makes me think of, people who have a pet snake? Like these big snakes that live in the home and stuff like that, and the snake cuddles up to them at night, or they think it's cuddling up to them, and then the snake starts to starve itself. It's no eating. And you take that snake to the doctor, and the doctor tells you, yeah, that snake, it is not cuddling up to you during the night, it's actually sizing you up, and it's not starving itself because it's on hunger strike or it's ill. It's actually starving itself so it could consume you in your sleep. But yeah, you can think it's cute and cuddly, and maybe they're not well, but that snake is coming for you. So Christa then turns 18, and her mother Carissa, she was just sick of her. She could not be bothered with Christa's actions, the trouble that she was bringing to the door. And not that she was ever a supportive mum, but she decided, you know what, I can't support you anymore. So she would kick Christa out, and this time it would be for good. Christa was told never to return to her mum's house. Her mother wanted nothing to do with her. And at this point, Christa doesn't really have any options left. So she decides that she's going to join the Job Corps. And this was a programme in Knoxville, Tennessee. And I know yous are all smarter than me, so I'm sure you know what the Job Corps is, but just in case you don't, like myself, I'm just going to give you a little rundown of what it is. So it's basically this government-funded programme, and that provides free vocational training and also housing for at-risk young adults, which Christa was. Think of it as sort of like a little military light reform school for kids who are kind of teetering on the edge of incarceration or homelessness, or both. For Christa at this point, this should have been a fresh start. This should have been a fresh opportunity like it was for the other young adults who were in this facility. But it wouldn't be. Because instead, for Christa, this Job Corps, the housing, it would become a breeding ground for obsession, delusion, and the eventual murder of an innocent young girl. At the Job Corps, Christa had met this 17-year-old boy by the name of Tadderel Shipp. And he's young with his own demons, his own big demons. And from the moment those two met, it was honestly like tossing gasoline onto an already raging fire. So here we have a young girl with an extremely violent history, zero support system, and deep mental health issues, being placed into this environment that's almost dorm style, where she can sort of roam free. And not only that, but she is meeting up with people such as Tadderel Shipp, who has issues that is just going to ignite further issues. I mean, what could go wrong, right? Oh, that's right, only everything. Everything will go wrong. And it is at this point here where we're going to dive in to one of the most twisted love stories you will ever hear of, that eventually became a murder pact. So yeah, strap in, get ready, because it's a wild ride. So, as I had already told you, Tadderel Shipp, he was only 17 years old when he first crossed paths with Christa Pike. Tadderel, he was brought up in Memphis of Tennessee in a neighbourhood that was just plagued by poverty, drugs and gang violence. And it seemed as though from a very young age, Tadderel had to learn to shut off emotionally to avoid himself being hurt, but also lashing out whenever he felt as though he was cornered. And according to court documents, as well as evaluations, it did state that Tadero had a history of anger management issues. But he also had a very, very sharp mind. He was deemed to be pretty smart and intelligent. Now, he was quiet, he kept to himself, but somewhere within him, he seemed to have this magnetism that would draw girls toward him, especially the girls at the Job Corps. Oh, and in case I hadn't sold Tadero to you enough, he was also obsessed with Satanism. Yep, Satanism. That is exactly what we all look for on a Tinder dating profile. Interested in Satanism, obsessed with Satanism. Yeah, swipe right. He would claim to Christa and the other girls that he practiced Satanism, he was very much involved with the occult, but whether that was him just trying to show off or whether this was actually an interest is still up for debate because no one really knows. And I just want to say, if you are interested in the occult, if you are interested in Satanism, that's fine. We all have our interests. Look at me, I'm obsessed with true crime and also horror movies. But I also know I'm not going to go out and do anything to anyone because I draw the line at it being an interest and something that I'm interested to learn about, not something I want to do. And whilst we don't know whether or not Tadero was telling the truth when he said he practiced, Satanism and the occult, it didn't really matter because Christa, she believed it wholeheartedly. She loved it. It really revved her gears. This was something that could really blow her hair back. And the fact that Christa believed this was just dangerous in itself. I mean, this girl, she started falling in love with Tadero right away. As soon as she hears occult, Satanism, practicing it all, she's like a cartoon character who falls in love and their tongue rolls out onto the table and their eyes pop out of their head. I'm not even thinking of a cartoon, I'm thinking of The Mask. But I think it happens in it does happen in a cartoon. The one with Jessica Rabbit, I'm sure it happens in that. The heart pounding out the chest and stuff. Now, living in the Job Corps, it wasn't any easy feat. There was constant fights, there was violent outbursts, there was really cliquey friendship groups, and there was also reports of abuse and bullying. Staff were really overwhelmed when they were trying to deal with everyone within the Job Corps, and it did seem as though mental health and mental well-being was just completely overshadowed by everything else that was going on. And that's the thing, I get that it's a good thing having this program where they can enroll and be trained in things like computer tech and all that, they get free housing. Whilst that's great, if you can't run that efficiently and keep these young adults who are quite clearly troubled in line, then it's really not that good. It becomes a chaos. It becomes a breeding ground for chaos. Because you're throwing these young adults with traumatic childhoods, criminal past, violent tendencies, mental health issues into this one big mixing pot that is just going to create a bomb explosion. But when Tadero and Christa found each other, they felt as though it was a perfect love story. Two broken teens coming together, looking for purpose and control and intensity. And when they connected, it wasn't just a fling, it was full-blown obsession. Christa in particular, she fell for Tadero's ship hard and fast. That's what she said. But within weeks of meeting each other, they were saying, "Oh, you're my soulmate, you're the love of my life, I just want to be with you every day." They even said that they were spiritually connected and they were meant to be together. And then Christa, it honestly just makes me gag thinking about it. Christa would refer to Tadero as her dark prince. Yeah, it's bad. No thank you. But they immediately bond over their love for horror movies, satanic iconography, and of course, their violent fantasies. Now, classmates said that they were basically a match made in heaven because the both of them would spend their time talking about pentagrams, they would talk about Satanism, the occult, what they were going to practice that night. And they would even sit in the common room and pretend, or maybe they really were, but they were pretending to put curses on the other students. Love. I mean, if you're not cursing other students, are you even in love, bro? Now, a former roommate had claimed that they had heard Christa say that she would do anything for Tadero, even kill Another former roommate, they had said that they weren't just weird, they were dangerous. And let me tell you, there is nothing worse than a dangerous weirdo. And what had started off as this seemingly normal teenage relationship where they think they're each other's love of their lives, blah blah blah, quickly turned into the psychosexual controlling relationship. And for Tadderall and Christa, their reality was just becoming warped, and they thought violence was something that could be justified. And now we're going to be discussing the person in this case who truly matters, the person that we should remember in this case, and that is Colleen Slemmer. Now, Colleen Slemmer, she was 19 years old, so when she was in the Job Corps, she was older than both Tadderall and Christa. And she had just enrolled within the Job Corps just weeks prior to her murder. She was originally from Key West of Florida, but she had struggled within a traditional school setting. She needed something a bit more tailored to someone like herself. And because she was struggling so much, she decided it would probably be a good and smart idea for her if she enrolled within the Job Corps in Knoxville, Tennessee, try and get herself a good start, get some computer tech training that she had always wanted. For Colleen, this was going to be a fresh start. Colleen was described as being incredibly bright and bubbly, with just a little, sprinkling of rebellion. She was quite individual in her style, according to her classmates. They said that she had a nose ring, she wore grunge style clothing, and honestly, she spoke her mind. Colleen wasn't afraid of confrontation, and she wasn't afraid of Christa. If she had to put Christa in her place, she absolutely would. So, within a few weeks of Colleen arriving to the Job Corps, Christa becomes increasingly and very quickly convinced that Colleen was flirting with Tadderall, that she wanted to be with Tadderall. And whether this actually happened or not is very, very questionable, and if I'm honest, I doubt it, because someone like Colleen, what is she going to see in someone like Tadderall? Most students would later say that Colleen had absolutely no interest in him whatsoever. God, she didn't even want to be his friend, let alone a girlfriend. But once this idea, this delusion was planted within Christa's mind, nothing could stop her. This delusion just metastasized within her head. And I mean, after all, who is going to resist her dark prince? It makes me gag every time I say it. Please, 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 if you're an alternative couple, if you're into the grunge, the occult, stuff like that, please don't refer to each other as dark prince and dark princess. Please. So Christa does the only thing that she really knows how to do, and that's just to be a vile bully. So she starts calling and telling everyone that Colleen was a slut, a whore, a bitch, and a witch, which, is pretty much, I wouldn't be bothered being called a witch, that would be fine with me, but I guess Christa meant it in a really bad way. Christa was telling her friends it was obvious that Colleen was trying to steal Tadderall from her, and she had even said to one of her friends, "That bitch needs to be taught a lesson." Christa, honey, the only person needing taught a lesson is you. Honestly, I hate talking about Christa Pike. I just can't stand her. I hate her. I think she's just an evil monstrosity of a person. I do apologise if you can hear any background noise. I've had to open a window because my camera keeps overheating. Love that for me. Anywho, right, so weeks before the murder, Christa, she's plotting away, and she's plotting away with Tadderall. Now, they go to another student by the name of Shadola Peterson, who her and Tadderall were very close friends with, and when talking about Colleen, they say that they're going to scare that bitch straight. Why? She doesn't want your man. She doesn't want your dark prince. Christa, she had talked about taking Colleen into the woods, giving her a good beating, and also leaving her marked. She said she was going to mark her with some sort of symbol. I don't know if this was going to be like a pentagram, and then she was going to let her go. And Shadola is hearing all of this, and she's just laughing along. She says she thought it was some kind of twisted joke. But on January the 12th of 1995, Christa, Tadderall, Colleen Slemmer, and Shadola Peterson, they would all go into the woods to patch things up, to clear the air, and only 3 of them would walk back out. Colleen, at the time, she had actually expressed to her friends that she was feeling very hesitant about this meetup that Christa wanted to have. She had stated that she didn't feel safe around Christa. She felt like there was an ulterior motive. And Colleen had felt so unsafe around Christa that she had also requested to be moved to a different dorm away from Christa, but this request was denied. And because of this, Colleen felt like she couldn't avoid Christa because she was going to see her back at the dorm. And in her mind, it would be the better option to go meet up and clear the air than to try and avoid Christa only to have to deal with her later. And Colleen attends this, hoping and praying and thinking in her mind, maybe it really is just for a chat. Maybe she really does just want to clear the air. She had no idea that she was walking into this deadly trap. So it would be after dark on the campus when the four of them, they would leave the Job Corps campus, and they had all walked toward the University of Tennessee's Agricultural Research Centre. Now, at this research centre, it was this forest, this wooded area, and it was full of trees, trails, but most importantly to Christa, it was filled with isolated spots. It was stated as the four of them approached the woods, Colleen just got this really unnerving, rattled feeling, and she tries to back out of it. She decides, I don't actually want any part of this. I just want to go back to the campus. This all feels very off to me. I don't feel safe. But Christa convinces her, we're just going to go smoke some weed, have a chat, patch things up and move on. And Colleen just so desperately wanted to believe this, and she followed them into the woods. And the minute that they were deep within those trees, everything changed. Christa immediately snapped. Christa's words, they immediately just turn into venom. Again, she is accusing Colleen of flirting with her dark prince, flirting with Tadderall as if he was some hot, saying that Colleen was trying to steal him from Christa. And Colleen's sitting there denying it, like, Christa, I don't want your man, like, respectfully, babe, keep him. He's not good for anyone. But Christa didn't want to hear the truth. She wasn't looking for the truth. She was looking for blood. And this is when she would lunge at Colleen. And what would follow wouldn't be a quick, impulsive act. This was a sustained act of torture. A sadistic assault that would last between 30 and 40 minutes. Christa, she started punching and kicking Colleen. Tadderall joined in. He's holding Colleen down, allowing Christa to do whatever she wants to her. And whilst Tadderall is holding down Colleen, Christa comes at Colleen with a box cutter, and she starts carving into this young girl's stomach, taunting her the entire time. As if brutally torturing her wasn't enough, she also had to psychologically torture her as well. As Colleen is laying there, begging for mercy, Christa, all she does is carve a pentagram into her chest whilst laughing at her. And this wasn't some sort of symbolic thing that she was doing. It was domination. It was control. She had marked Colleen forever, and that is exactly what Christa wanted. Christa wanted Colleen to look at her body and see her. Now, Shadola Peterson, I do have to say that she did nothing in this. And I mean nothing as in she didn't participate in this sadistic assault, but she also did nothing to try and help Colleen. And I know she said she was scared. I know she said she felt like she couldn't do anything, otherwise she would be a victim. But if you can stand there and watch, because that's what she did, she watched as it happened. She wasn't turning away, trying to cover her ears and cover her eyes. She watched what happened to Colleen. And then as Colleen lay on the ground, begging and pleading for her life, Christa laughs and she picks up this huge, jagged bit of concrete. And this thing was like the size of a brick. And she goes over to Colleen, who is a broken person at this point, and she starts to crush Colleen's skull over and over and over again with this brick. She was attacking Colleen's skull so viciously with this large bit of concrete that it actually cracked her skull open, and her brain matter was exposed. Her skull was completely shattered. But Christa didn't stop there. She was mesmerised at the scene that she had caused, at what she had done to Colleen, and she leaned down to Colleen's body. She took a bit of Colleen's skull and put it in her pocket as a trophy. I mean, does it get any sicker? And once this horrific murder was complete, the three of them, Shadola included, they just head back to the campus, cool, calm and collected. Christa, however, she was energetic. She really had a spring in her step after committing this murder. And she is so stupid. And let's be honest, most of these sadistic murderers are, because if they weren't stupid, they wouldn't get caught. But they always do. Christa was bragging to a friend. She told a friend, "I've finally done it. I finally murdered her," as if it was something normal. She had stated that the murder was real sweet, and then proceeded to show her friend the piece of Colleen's skull. A student had later told the police that Christa had pulled out that piece of Colleen's skull and said, look at this, it's Colleen's skull, ain't it cool?" Proper bragging. She's such a freak. I actually cannot believe how much of a weirdo this person is. She had even made jokes that she had ate Colleen's brains, which was deemed later to be untrue, but it's just so sick and twisted and so demented that this was a joke to her and that this was something she would lie about. Get a life, get a grip. Now, not only had Christa hung on to a piece of Colleen's skull, she had also hung on to Colleen's ID, which in her mind was another form of control and domination, the fact that she had another thing that belonged to Colleen. Because this whole thing was about ownership, control and ego. Meanwhile, whilst Christa's bragging about all of this, Colleen's barely clothed body is lying in the middle of the woods. Her skull completely crushed, she is battered, she is bruised, she is cut all over. And it's just horrifying, but someone who was just out for their morning jog the next morning, they would come by Colleen Slemmer's body. And I can't even imagine how traumatising that would be, considering everything that had happened to her. But Christa still wasn't bothered. She wasn't even scared that Colleen's body would be found. She was just too busy turning herself into the star of the own horror movie that she had created. But thankfully it wouldn't take the truth long to surface, because Christa, this freak, this weirdo, this cretin-faced monster, she couldn't help herself. She couldn't keep the information to herself. Because over the next 24 hours, she had told at least 6 people that she had murdered Colleen. She had described the details of Colleen's murder with such pride, it was like a badge of honour to her. At one point she had even told someone she just wouldn't die. It felt so good, I just couldn't stop. By the following day, all these rumours, they were circulating because the students were all talking, and it got back to the Job Corps staff, who immediately called the police, and when the police came to question the students, Christa didn't even attempt to deny it. And in fact, it wasn't even just that she didn't deny it. She was willing to give a full confession, and she loved every minute of it. She would hand over to the police Colleen's ID card and also her piece of skull. She described the murder from start to finish, the reasons why. She didn't cry. Again, she says this with pride. She simply said, "Yes, I did it. I killed that girl." When she was brought in for official questioning, she had told the police how she lured Colleen into the woods under false pretenses, how she mutilated Colleen's body, how she tortured her, how they mocked her screams, how Colleen tried to escape but they brought her back. She was happy to volunteer it all. And according to police transcripts, Christa's tone was very matter of fact. And at some point she even sounded cheerful and proud. At one point during questioning, she had even told police that when Colleen was begging and pleading for mercy, she had turned to her and said, "Shut up, it's harder when you scream." And detectives, of course, are absolutely stunned, not only at the voluntary confession that they're getting, but Christa's complete lack of human empathy, complete lack of remorse. There was nothing about her that was sorry. And it was the physical evidence in this case that was something out of a horror movie that removed any doubt that it might have been anyone other than Christa who had committed this sadistic killing. Now, whilst Christa had practically gifted the case to the prosecutors, her co-defendants would take a very different route. Tadderall Shipp, who was only 17, he lawyered up immediately. He refused to confess outright, but he would eventually give a statement that acknowledged his presence at the murder. He claimed that Christa was the main aggressor and that he didn't partake in the murder apart from holding Colleen down. I'm sorry, Tadderall, do you mean the very restraint that stopped this young woman getting away? the thing that ultimately led to Christa being able to murder her. And he said the only reason he helped hold Colleen down was because he was scared of Christa. And honestly, cry me a frickin' river, I do not give a tiny rat's ass. Then we've got Shadola Peterson. She, I have to give it to her, she fully cooperated with the police. Too little too late though to be voluntary with this information. She admitted to the police that she was there, but she insisted that she had absolutely no idea just how far Christa would take it, despite Christa telling her the plans. Her testimony, it would be instrumental in being able to convict Christa. And I have to be honest, this did completely enrage me, but I get why it's done, I suppose. But I mean, no, I don't, but I do also. But Shadola Peterson, in exchange for her testimony, because this helped secure the conviction against Christa, she was granted complete immunity, which I think that's a crime in itself. Now, Tadderall Shipp, because he was only 17 at the time, he was a minor, so he would be tried separately and face a life sentence. But Christa, baby gal was 18. In the state of Tennessee, they had no mercy for what Christa had done. Christa's trial would begin in March of 1996, just a year after the murder of Colleen Slemmer. And let's just say, the prosecution, they didn't hold back. The prosecution had stated that this crime was ritualistic, sadistic, and fueled by complete jealousy and sadism. They had presented to the court Colleen's skull fragment, also the pentagram that was carved into her chest alongside her photo ID. And then there was also Christa's confession, which left the jurors in that court completely traumatised. But Christa, she barely reacted. She didn't even flinch. She didn't care. It was reported that she was smiling and giggling throughout her trial. She was even whispering jokes to her defence attorney, like, someone shut her up, tape her mouth shut, just gag her, because no, I don't want to hear anything from that little troll's mouth. And at one point, I can't even say what I want to say because YouTube will not allow me to say it, but she would laugh as the details of Colleen's final injuries were described to the jury. The judge had even commented on her very chilling detachment from what she had done. Her defence team tried to argue that Christa Pike was mentally ill and that she was possibly suffering from borderline personality disorder, bipolar disorder, or even schizoaffective tendencies. And I'm sorry, we're not doing that. We're not doing that today, because I know people who have these illnesses and they wouldn't hurt a fly, and I'm sick and tired of people like Christa Pike trying to use mental health as an excuse for murdering someone, because people who suffer with mental health, they're more likely to hurt themselves than they are to hurt anyone else, so don't give me that shit. Psychologists had testified and talked about her childhood trauma, her childhood abuse, blah blah blah. Like, listen, it was terrible. What happened to her should never have happened to her. But that does not excuse what she did to Colleen Slemmer. And whilst these psychologists were testifying against her traumatic childhood, etc., none of the expert witnesses would actually declare her legally insane. So at least that's something. Now, thankfully, Christa, she was found competent to stand trial. And the jury had believed that despite her trauma as a child, she knew exactly what she was doing when she murdered Colleen Slemmer, and she should be punished for doing so. Now, her defence's Hail Mary that they pull out in a final attempt to try and get a lesser sentence was the fact that she was only 18 years old. Boo-hoo, cry me a river. Now, the jury, after hearing everything throughout the trial, they would deliberate for over 4 hours, and when they came back, they would return the verdict of death. They wanted her sentenced to death. Job well done, my friends. And at just 20 years old, Christa Pike, she would become the youngest woman in US history to be on death row since the reinstatement of capital punishment. So Christa, she would be transferred to the Nashville Prison for Women, and she was placed on death row, held in solitary confinement, and she literally has no human contact. But even whilst this bitch is in prison, whilst she is isolated, somehow she is still able to make headlines. Because I don't know who she's writing to, but she's writing to someone, and she is writing some weird ass letters. She even wrote saying that she doesn't lose sleep over what she did to Colleen. Colleen had it coming. She got what she deserved. That is exactly what Christa had wrote in one of her letters. Now, an inmate who had served some time with Christa, she had stated that Christa said the only regret she had from Colleen Slemmer's murder was that she didn't murder Shadola Peterson too. And honestly, you'd think when somebody's placed on death row behind bars that the story ends there. But not for Christa Pike. She was still plotting, manipulating, just doing things trying to reach beyond those bars. By the early 2000s, Christa Pike had been on death row for several years. But if anyone thought a wee bit solitary confinement, a wee bit alone time was going to mellow her out, they were sadly mistaken. In 2001, Christa Pike, she would be charged with the attempted murder of another inmate. Now, the two of them, Patricia Jones and Christa Pike, they had got into an argument over some sort of romantic relationship because in prison, Christa found herself a girlfriend. This was done through word of mouth and also little love letters they had wrote. The fight had turned brutal. Christa starts strangling Patricia with a shoelace, almost killing her. Thankfully, the guards had intervened just in time and Patricia was took away for treatment. But it just shows you, you know, like the minute she thinks she loves someone, it's like the gloves are off. She's going to do anything. And at this point, she's no longer just a teenage killer. She is an ongoing murderer who will strike again. And it doesn't stop there. Somehow, somewhere, it gets weirder because the guards and the warden of the prison, they catch wind that Christa Pike is planning and plotting her escape. Apparently she was going to do this with help from the outside, but also correctional staff. Now, this plot had included bribing a prison guard, offering them $10,000. Where she's getting that from, I'm not sure because baby gal didn't have any money. But she was going to ask this correctional officer to leave the door unlocked during a prison transport. I mean, has she seen Prison Break or something? Because, you know, the storylines are crossing over. But she was definitely planning something because she actually had blueprints, maps, letters, phone logs, because somehow she had even been able to smuggle a cell phone into prison. Thankfully, this was all discovered days before it was meant to take place, and there was actually a correctional officer who was let go for their involvement in this plot. What? And thankfully with this, Christa would be moved to an even stricter location with even more limited contact. But she's not done attention seeking because let's talk about 2015. She makes headlines again, and this time it's something to do with love. She was attempting to marry a New Jersey man who had become obsessed with her case. If you're going to get obsessed with a murderer's case and want to marry them, I'm going to want you checked out and locked up as well. Now this man, Glenn, he had been writing to Christa for months, and obviously Glenn doesn't have a brain, because what are you up to, bro? But he was writing to her for months. He was declaring his love, promising financial support, and he was also trying to adopt her as his spiritual partner. I don't know how that works. Is that a legal thing, or is this just something that you do? Like, do you hold a wee ritual or ceremony and bam, you know, adopted spiritual partner? I don't know, I've never heard of that. Thankfully, this relationship fizzled out real quick and it just raised questions like, why do serial killers have fans? It doesn't make any sense. Like, you had Ted Bundy, Richard Ramirez, and now Christa Pike. As of 2025, Christa Pike, she still remains on death row. She has put in multiple appeals regarding her mental health, remorse that she feels. She also claimed ineffective counsel, but luckily all of these were denied. Now, Tennessee does still have the death penalty, but no one's actually been executed since 2020, and this was due to legal complications and moratoriums on lethal injection protocols. But I say, even if it's faulty, just give it. If it takes her off the planet, why not? Now, luckily for us, Christa Pike, her name's still at the top of the execution list, so, you know, unless anything changes, we should still see her be executed one day. And as always, let's just bring it right back to the person who actually matters in this case and the person who we should actually remember, and that is Colleen Slemmer. She was just 19 years old when her life was taken from her. She was someone with dreams, aspirations. She wanted to get a good job, she wanted to do well in life, and she wanted to build her own life on her own terms. She didn't deserve to die in a forest. She didn't deserve to be stalked, tortured and murdered by Christa Pike, who used her as a pawn in her own sick and twisted delusion. Now, I will say, Colleen Slemmer's family, they very much stayed out of the spotlight right up until 2008. They just wanted to be able to mourn their daughter, their loved one, in peace and quiet. But in 2008, Colleen's mother did come out and she said the following: "We don't want people to remember how she died. We want them to remember who she was. Smart, loyal, kind, and brave." And I think it shows that Colleen truly was brave. She fought until the very, very end. And it's a really sad reality, the fact that in this case, it does tend to be Christa Pike's name that's known. Colleen Slemmer seems to be a footnote in her own story, which is so unfair. So if you take anything away from this case today, please let it be Colleen Slemmer's name. Please let it be her attributes, her bravery, her kindness, her friendliness, her compassion. Please remember those details of this case, because Colleen deserves it and her family deserves it too. And I am sending every single one of them so much love, peace, and strength. But my loves, that is it for another true crime and makeup episode. I do hope this one was interesting. I know it is a more well-known case, but for the sake of Colleen, I really wanted to do this case and do it justice. If you do enjoy my content, please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. It means the world to me. It really helps with the algorithm, and it helps hopefully get me toward my dream one day of doing this full time, where I will just do content all the time for you. Any details you need regarding me, myself, and I will all be listed down below in the description, alongside the products that I've used on my face today. If there's anything you would like to pick up, any case suggestions you have, they can be left in the comments down below. They can be submitted to my Google Doc, which is listed in the description, or you can email or DM me on Instagram if you would prefer. But that is it for today. Please, please, please remember, be a good person, do not be a bad person, stay safe, look after each other, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!